Welcome, welcome, welcome. What incredible work, and we really appreciate you taking time to share your story and the tremendous work they're doing as examples of outsized impact in our Exponent community. As we think about that transformative and catalytic impact, it comes in so many different ways. And so this time is about you, your work, but also, as Exponent's well known for, is inspiring ways to translate that in other areas. So we want to hear some more from you. So a few questions, and I'll start at the far end down here. What has inspired and influenced you the most to make an outsized impact?
When I got started in this business, my whole career has been in international development, but when I started 20 years ago, Capital Sisters International, the vast majority, disproportionate majority of the people living among the poorest of the poor were female. And philanthropy at that time was contributing about 1% to women and girls organizations. I think now, 20 years later, we're up to 1.9%, most optimistic. Some people say 1.6. International funding is a fraction of that. So that really inspired me. And for the business people in the community, venture capital isn't doing much better. Women-owned businesses receive about 2%. So that was really the first thing. And then beyond that, I think what I discovered through a career in public policy and activism was that you have to make systemic changes to attack a problem as large as poverty. I worked for a couple decades with Congress and State Department, and what I saw is that billions of dollars in aid really had not moved the needle for women, in particular women and girls. So that inspired me to create the first women's bond in the world and use the capital markets, because frankly it takes all of us, NGOs, governments, churches, philanthropists, but add that to the capital markets and watch out. I mean, impact investing is really taking off now. So I encourage all of you to attend sessions on impact investing. I had a wonderful one this morning. So it's a great topic to be informed about, and it is moving the needle.
Thank you. For you?
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to be here with these women. We discovered we have a commonality that we all have, in part, worked internationally. So that's very exciting. Just as Patricia also shared, for me, working in international human rights and meeting with frontline activists has really been my primary spur and inspiration. So many times they are the ones who are trying to save their communities and facing abuse, harassment, criminalization, human rights abuses all over the world. And they're doing it with very little support, oftentimes from philanthropy in their own home countries. And this is a place where we feel like, as a northern-based foundation, we can make a difference to stand in solidarity with them and give them the support that they need to be able to fight for the social change that they are so desiring in their communities. So it's really been meeting with those activists that continues to inspire me.
Thank you. Danyelle.
So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Mortenson Family Foundation is here in Minneapolis. We have always, for years, centered equity in our work. It's been something that's been important for us, but I would say prior to the pandemic, we were on an internal exploration around what that really meant. What is equitable grant making? What does equity mean? Especially from the place of power and privilege that the Mortensons are positioned. So, George Floyd was murdered here in Minneapolis, and that really pushed our, what I would call, inward reflection into outward action. That really inspired us to put commitment, words behind action into what we want to do. And we, in that moment, committed to a set of actions that we want to hold ourselves accountable to. And they are that we want to be making more grant making in Black and Brown and Indigenous communities. We want to be doing more systems change and advocacy work. We want to share power. We want to bring communities and community voice into our grant-making processes. And so these are our guiding stars. This is what really drives our work. And the further we go with this work, it's just more clearly that we understand that the wisdom and the knowledge and commitment is truly in the communities that we seek to serve, and centering their voices really moves forward our mission.
Wonderful. And you're kind of leading into my next question. And I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. So how have you changed in this work? As your work has progressed, the partnerships, the communities, your grantees, I like to say partners, how have you changed in that work as you've gone into it?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say change so much as embraced.
Great word.
And it's embracing what is needed now to move our work forward. So I'm not an expert. I'm a generalist and what I would call a supporter. That's what I do. I love creating space where people can connect and learn from one another and leverage one another's strengths and create something new. And I'd say that I'm really embracing that and leveraging it to support our partners and our communities to do their work.
Thank you.
I think for us, working over time and getting more and more comfortable with being able to support work and organizations at an earlier stage of development, being able to take more risk. Some organizations that we've supported have, barely gotten themselves together. They grew out of a volunteer situation, and we've seen how time and time again, taking the leap to support some of those early stage investments has just led to incredible impact, and has been particularly an area, I would add, that is important for smaller, leaner funders such as ourselves, where we can take that risk, where sometimes those larger foundations, it's very hard for them to move the ship of state to take a chance on a small new project or new organization. And so that's something over time we've just grown more and more comfortable with taking those risks.
I think the first lesson I learned early on is that if you put women in the driver's seat of their own life, watch out. They're resourceful, they're brilliant, right? I mean, who knows their needs for their children better than they do? Nobody, right? Would anybody here disagree with that? Women are amazing. They're resourceful, they're resilient, they're committed. And I've seen this all through the pandemic and all through mudslides, hurricanes, tornadoes. It doesn't matter. They're there and they're working their businesses. So, first of all, credit to the women that I make microloans to. I make $100 microloans. The second lesson I think I touched on a little bit is that systemic barriers are what keep people poor, and it requires change at the systems level. So when I first got into microlending, I realized that the collateral requirements from traditional lending are an impossible requirement for people, a population that largely is denied property rights. So first lesson is you may as well put the bank in the men's room, because she can't get the loan. She doesn't have the assets. So we make collateral-free loans, and we've raised over $12 million now, and our women are paying back at 99%. Our partners are, yeah. So women are a great investment, and I picked women because they're disadvantaged, but also because, no offense to those of you who are the stand-up guys, but the repayment rates in developing countries from men are far lower. Even the Grameen Bank, the famous Mohammed Yunus, doesn't loan to the men because their repayment rates are around 40%. And women reinvest most of their profits back in the family. So it's a systemic change, it's a critical change, our process is an alternative collateral. It's called joint liability. So if a group of women take out a loan, they're responsible for each other's repayment. And it works more effectively than collateral. So systems change is really important.
Outstanding. Incredible with the systems approach. I'm interested, you have said so much success you're sharing, but also as we go through this, there's things in philanthropy you sometimes don't talk about, are like the missteps, the mistakes, the lessons learned. Sometimes those lessons from, well, I used to use the acronym as FAIL, first attempts in learning, like trying new things. Could you share, and Katrin, if we can start with you first, I'd just be interested, like, what have been some lessons learned that have made the work even greater?
Yeah. I would say two things, and I know my other lean funders will relate to me on this, is you do have to pace yourself sometimes and not try to take on too much without support. I often sit at tables with much, much larger funders who have these giant teams. But you know, to not lose heart, right? And we can still have an incredible impact. We're part of this beautiful philanthropy ecosystem we have here, and we have our role to play. The other thing is also to, particularly if you're funding social change work, human rights work, poverty, anti-poverty work, justice work, realizing that these stories do also affect us too. And so sometimes we really need to sit with that actually and acknowledge that, because it's intense, some of the work that we're supporting and funding. It's powerful.
Thank you. Danyelle?
Yeah. So I'll tell a little story. You heard me mention earlier that one of our commitments is that we want to center community voice, and we've done that so far by bringing community members into our grant-making process, right? And we compensate the community members that are involved, right? Recognizing that they are giving of their time and their resources. And although we compensate them, initially, I worried about scaring our new committee members away with the amount of work I knew it was going to be to really kind of get this off the ground. And so I lowballed it. I kind of figured I could take on, kind of the bulk of the work and not put too much burden on them. And there's no problem with me taking on additional work. In fact, I feel like that's our role as staff, is to take on as much as we can. But it's also our role as staff as to bring a wisdom about what is the work communities need to be doing, right? And that's what I learned, is that our community members, our full committee with the Mortensons and community members, needed to do the work of creating the committee, of figuring out how they're going to operate, figuring out what they're going to be and how they're going to be who they are. And one of my wise committee members said to me, Danyelle, we recognize and so appreciate you wanting to take the burden off of us, but we got this and we need to do it. And them getting in and spending time together and really grappling with hard issues creates deeper relationships. It creates a sense of ownership, and we're seeing it creates better work. So that was a big learning.
That's great. Thank you. Patricia?
That's a hard one to follow, both of you. I mean, I really admire the work that all of you do here. So most of you could be up here on stage with us. So thank you, everybody, for the support. I guess the greatest lesson I could share is that innovation is really, really hard. It is, impact investing is a growing field, but it's been a painful, long journey, as those of you who are involved know. It's a matter of educating people and showing results and removing some of the negative language around, suffering from less than market returns. And I provide a social dividend and save lives. I think that's pretty good return on investment for my zero interest bond. So we finance the $100 loans by selling $1,000 zero interest bonds. And we've had a lot of demand for the bonds, but in order to support the loan fund, we use a blended capital model where it's investments plus donations. So the donations support our team and the investments support the microloans. And it's a complicated message, as all of you who go into impact investing understand. And I found a lot of resistance in the foundation community, to be honest. I've also found some real champions, including some of your members. Jane Justice, I'll give you a shout out if you're out there, with Leidy Foundation, and Heather Carroll with Edmondson. They have really helped us on the journey to bring other foundations in and say, hey, we're doing this and it works. So Women's Foundation is a prime example. Initially they did no investment of their $22 million endowment with a gender lens, and they're a women's foundation. And there was a lot of resistance with the old team, but now they have a commitment, 100% gender lens investing with their endowment, and I really commend leaders like that. So, I mean, I think that's the big message here for me on that.
Thanks, Patricia. You know, thinking about the collaborative space Exponent exists in, we learn a lot from our peers, the ability to reach out to folks across the country. Thinking about the work you've done, what advice do you give to other Exponent members, those gathered here and those that are out in the field today, as to how they can take their work to the next level for outsized impact? And Patricia, do you mind if I start with you?
Oh, sure, no problem. My advice is think big. Think really big. Think systems, think advocacy, think radical change that these two fellow finalists have been talking about. You know, get involved. We can make outsized impacts in the areas that we really care about by, here's the thing, preventing the problem versus addressing the problem. And so rather than trying to save all the children in the river downstream, wouldn't you think you'd go upstream and keep them from falling in the river? And so while you hate to walk away from drowning children, of course, but we need to put more emphasis on prevention. We need to put ourselves out of a job is what we need to do. And prevention is the key. This war business that we're seeing now, all these misplaced resources, think of the hospitals, schools, think of the families, think of the small businesses we could be funding. So I do feel that women, as they enter leadership positions and as foundations fund more women and girls initiatives, we're going to see a shift in the balance of the perfect balance between the male and female energy and wisdom and tradition is going to create a better world. And that's what keeps me, you know, really hopeful. So I think that's the key message, because these are big problems. Right now, the gender imbalance is we're 200 million females shy in the world, from India and China and places like that, where there's a preference for the male child. And so 200 million missing females because they're considered a burden to their family. And that's really what motivates me. It's a pretty big goal. We've got to turn that in a better direction.
Thank you.
Well, your work inspires me, and actually I was going to say something very similar. I would say, even though we're sometimes small and lean, to not be afraid to think big and to be at larger tables, and also just, again, to the kinds of problems we're talking about here, to be always thinking kind of short, medium, and long term. I often say that we as funders have the benefit of the 10,000-foot view. A lot of times our grantees are just, you know, trying to keep their projects going, trying to keep the lights on, trying to keep their movements functioning. And grant making is only one part of what we do. I remember I learned about something at my very first meeting, which at that time was ASF, the Association for Small Foundations. Small can be effective. And it's a pamphlet, and it lists 20 functions of philanthropy. Grant making is only one. And a lot of what we can do is shine a spotlight that we have unique access to on the incredible work of our partners and the reasons for their work and how they're doing it and the impact they're having. So I would encourage you all to think about that as well.
Thank you. Danyelle?
Yeah, I think I have three things. One is start where you are. Be intentional, have a plan, but be open to emergence. The second is find ways to engage with and build authentic relationships in the communities you seek to serve. And then the third is articulate your commitments. Figure out what they are. You know, engage with your community to help you figure out what they are and hold yourselves accountable to them.
Let's give our honorees, our finalists, a round of applause. Great wisdom. And I want to invite up my wonderful colleague, Christiana, who actually facilitates the awards program, to announce the great news.
Thank you, Paul. I am pleased to present this year's award to Danyelle O'Hara. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Congratulations.
A few thank yous I'd like to make. A huge thank you to Exponent Philanthropy for this award, this opportunity. And thank you to the communities we support and we serve. Our work starts and ends with community. I also want to thank Foundant for the nomination. There's something deeply touching about being seen and acknowledged. It's super humbling. And I very much want to be worthy of this recognition. Thank you. Thanks to the Mortensen family and the tremendous openness that they've brought to this process. It's been deep work for each of them individually as well as for our foundation. And I want to say thanks to our foundation team. Donna Dalton, the executive director for years leading up to and through this entire process and transformation that we've been through. It's her vision that we've been working towards and her incredible leadership, thought partnership, and collaboration that have been with me every step of the way. Ambar Hansen, who not only replicated the process but in a second program, but did it better, and who is now leading the foundation as the executive director. Camille Gonzalez, who provides the most gracious and thorough support, and our new colleague, Marianne Abdenur, who is already bringing the work into the future. So thank you.